About 5 months ago now, I had set out to create the ultimate film studio and had moved to a brand new island to achieve said goal. After a few successful building projects, my focus got torn away as I then got distracted finishing up a coastal retreat. Enough with the nonsense now though, and back to business we go. Let me get you up to date with all the ongoing projects. After signing the necessary permits to acquire this land and proving myself to Tom Nook, who for some reason has all to say, I prepared the logo for the film studio and adjusted my outfit. Dress for the job and all that. Although I'm not really sure what my job would be then. And then I gathered all the strength my little ball hands would allow and started building the studio from the ground up. The first thing was the entrance and parking lot itself, with some fence keeping out any unwanted visitors as well as a security booth to check people upon entering. I also made sure to have an interview panel up and running for whenever the time to promote the movies would come, and then started building up the first 2 sound stages right behind the entrance. I hired Marshall as the director for Soundstage 1, which currently has a green screen setup on the inside, and Stage 2 is occupied by Marlo and his apprentice Humphrey with a Regency film set as well as some storage space. To help with any other hires as well as general decision making, I also added Tasha to the team and moved her house right beside mine as the headquarters. Other hires currently include Agnes for hair and makeup, Blurry for food styling, and then Walker and Zell in some to be determined positions. More on this later. For now, Tasha and I had made some rough plans as per the rest of the studio's infrastructure, and even though not final at all, our next focus would be establishing a spot for the hair and makeup department as well as costume designing, since our goal was to have many of these departments on site. Speaking of infrastructure, that would be the first order of business, what with the current road just sort of stopping here. And because I seem to have just as many talents as responsibilities in this world, of course, I would be laying the street myself. I started by simply extending it further down in direction of the beach, as well as establishing a spot to cross over the existing river. Our bridge here would probably have to be much wider and sturdier than the current one though. Once roughly in place, the next task would be to connect it all and then put down the required layers. The groundwork, aka in-game path, so that you can also see the path reflected on the map, the sidewalk tiles, and then all the street codes. Halfway through the process, Tech started serenading me from the plaza. I'm starting to think that we'll be producing movie musical adaptations here with all the practice singing over the last few weeks. The freshly installed street does leave a bit of awkward space here by the plaza, but I'm sure that I'll be able to figure something out sooner or later. I mean, when in doubt, add some branding, am I right? Let me now also remove these wooden pieces here to make space for something a bit sturdy. Oh, I'm too poor for that. Well, not in Animal Crossing land, I'm not. There we go, much better. The request to remove the bridge is put in, but since Nook doesn't work quite as efficiently as I do, we'll have to wait a day. In the meantime, let me remove this river swoop here because I think I would like that to be a little bit less dramatic. With both the river swoop as well as the bridge gone, I next up made some changes to the existing water to make it flow a bit more naturally, even though, of course, there's nothing natural about it anymore. And then I also built that promised sturdy bridge. Now we have some serious infrastructure plans and many more buildings to include, so I will actually bring the street all the way to the other side up until the beach, and I'll make sure to also install some railing for the bridge. I quickly ended up realizing that I might have to connect the street to the interview panel as well, which would actually offset the current planned road by exactly 1 tile, and so I procrastinated this decision for a little bit, but then ultimately I ended up fixing the street, so now it's all aligned on all sides. And that now brings me to some more housing decisions. On the left side of the bridge, I would like to install the hair and makeup department led by Agnes. In order to plan out the space accordingly, I gathered all of my incredible strength and carried this pergola to the spot as reference. And then on the right side of the bridge, we'll have the costume department. Tasha and I actually decided to bring in a dedicated costume designer as well as get the Able sisters on board for this. And currently the space was still kind of blocked by the shop, so let me just walk you through the measures I took here briefly. First up, I moved the shop to the very back of the island before also moving Agnes to her previously decided spot. And then Walker was also still living somewhere around this area, so his house was promptly moved to the beach to make space for something else later on. And then in the pouring rain, because apparently I hate my life, I decided to map out where to put the tailor shop. Since I wanted to act more like a workshop in the back, I kind of want to create a similar vibe to the setup setup with Tasha and my own house. Only in this case, it would have to be more hidden since the workshop isn't following brand colors. Now, you see, I did consult the Able sisters, but they refused to repaint their house, so I really have no other choice but to hide it, right? I mean, we have a certain public image to uphold after all. Alright, so we'll have a house here in the front, another incline, and then the tailor shop on the platform. The road will probably continue up past the tailor shop, and then Flurry might move to the right-hand side as the food designer. My imagination for all the houses and changes is kind of reaching its limit though, so it seems as though it's time to bring in someone new. May I introduce John? Pre-makeover. Inspired by John Glazer from Bridgerton, he will be our costume designer. With a nice little welcome gift from yours truly, he was quickly able to pay off his mile debt as well as all his actual money debt and turn his tent into an impressive house. Oh, and yes, of course, he did have a little makeover, and at this point I should probably mention that John Glazer really only is the name and maybe glasses inspo in this case. And now the house obviously also needs its own makeover. Luckily, John is way more open to my suggestions, and so we can stick to the brand colors. I was torn between these two options here, but because I personally prefer this house shape, I will choose this and try it out. With John having joined the framework team, let me now also talk to the Able sisters and get the workshop moved as well. Now the cliff that I had prepared is just enough room. However, considering I might still want to include a few items, let me make that a tad bigger. Perhaps this will be enough, and I can always add more later on, of course. As I was also planning the location of Flurry's house, I realized that this would be a much tighter fit than I had thought at first. Flurry, however, seems quite happy and optimistic about it. Oh, and she also told me about a cotton candy recipe that she had just discovered. I wonder what movie that will be for. With the tailor shop moved, I also installed an incline for that cliff and made sure to move Flurry's house into the plant location as well. And then of course both Agnes and Flurry would also need the framework remodel as well. Agnes got the slightly altered black siding, and Flurry's was also kept white while fitting the other houses a bit more. After some well-deserved rest from all this hard work, it was now time to actually lock into the decorating. But first, I called John to remove his mailbox because that constant notification would have driven me up the wall. As the first thing, I made sure to put the stone bricks down all around Agnes' house. Although with this being so close to the river, I wasn't entirely sure what to do about the edges. Agnes also let me know that she would like to have space in her backyard for a makeup trailer that she can drive around the studio to the different sets. For the trailer itself, we'd need some type of a white box with a window and a door and some tires. The tire toys definitely come to mind right away, but of course, I currently don't have those. White display stands once again seem to be just a thing. Oh, and perhaps I could include a car that can pull and deliver the trailer to wherever it's needed on set. And having some simple panels ready also can't hurt. I was intrigued to try out a few other items to get the trailer illusion down, but after picking up an order for said items as well as tires, I quickly realized that wasn't really leading anywhere. But hey, white display stands with a car in front, perhaps a simple panel as the door, and the promised tire toys could maybe work. It would be really cool to be able to somehow put in a window code. Let me see something. Oh, we could put a custom design here. Maybe not as a window, but like a poster that would be like inside the trailer. And then if I place something inside the display stand, it might make it look more realistic. Or wait, a TV to pretend it's a window? I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think it works. Zell and Marshall also seem quite interested in what I'm doing here. I think Zell hasn't quite understood that these aren't really supposed to be for sitting down though. With the current setup, there's also some more stone bricks missing, so I made sure to lay those down. And then I would still have to install a proper door, aka make or find a fitting custom design. And in this reference I have here, the trailer is actually even a little longer than the current version. So I added another white display stand to the front bit, as well as another simple panel to hide some of that glass. And then adding some rope fence sort of makes it look like it's connected to the car. I like that. Now, as for the trailer door, this isn't quite the right vibe just yet. In my research, I had found this one here, but unfortunately, since it's two parts, I can't put that on a simple panel, which means I will have to design a door on my own. Oh gosh, let me instead distract myself with my favorite topic, trees. Naturally, I will of course make changes to the waterscaping just to be able to fit more of those. so let me plant one just in front of the trailer here as well as behind it. With the frame of the door now swapped to gray and then some more changes to the door design, I guess this will sort of be the trailer. Listen, if anyone has tips regarding door handles, slide into the comments please. For now, let's move on. The space around the house is still somewhat awkward despite the tree having grown in. I mean, what is this grass doing here? And there's obviously not enough branding going on right now either, and no one even knows what this building is yet. That simply won't do. Now, I definitely like this planned partition for Agnes' house, and let's be honest, that is like the dream location for a branded flag. Everything else was way more trouble, to be honest. With so many grassy borders and actually not all that much space, it was a whole bunch of trial and error. Like here on the right-hand side, anything I placed down obviously kind of covered the wheels of the trailer, which was subpar at best since it would destroy the entire illusion. I was surprised at how much I liked the utility pole though. Thin enough not to cover too much, but just enough to make the grass disappear, at least from the correct angles. And hey, turns out the solution is just to add more items and shift around some trees. Who would have thought? Me. I would have thought. Oh, and wheat fields, of course. And perhaps over here on the left, we have a delivery going out, so it's awake, all prepped and ready to go. Apart from that, I ended up with a little scrapbook, perhaps pictures of all the makeup looks planned for a specific character, as well as a little shopping bag, and then I just used these black Zen cushions on the other side. Now you have to kind of picture the sapling gone from the spot, and maybe some slippers in front of that door. This sign I had placed down is obviously not the correct one yet, as this is not where additions happen, so after a lot of adjusting, let's just say that I will never be a pixel artist, I decided to leave it like this. I also added a rope partition to the entrance, and after just a few more color changes, this is what Agnes! Hi, do you like your new Agnes? Agnes? Okay, I'm not so sure she likes it. Never mind, she's just trying to take a break on the beach. You do that, Agnes. We'll give her some space. For some finishing touches, I also added a camera and swapped out some of the stone tiles for the vertical version. I added in a bike, fixed up the bridge fence, and voila. Now let me get my little shovel ready and do just a bit of gardenscaping. I could plant a tree here on the side of the road and one behind the trailer. Perhaps that'll peek through as well. Now, small spaces on city-esque islands just like this one here always confuse me, so I avoided the part for a while, but then ultimately later on, this ended up being used for some solar panels. The little tree on the side of the road looks quite cute like this, and the one behind the trailer I'd planted a while back has also grown in now. Nice. And now, before I get even more lost in details here, let me make sure that I get the costume department up and running as well. First things first is of course the stone tiles. I'll go spread those all around the house, and I also want to make sure to install some more street in between the costume department and Flurry's house. And while I'm hard at work here, Walker is just running around enjoying his time. Good for him. I also added the stone floor around the tailor shop, and now this is what I have to work with. Let me immediately save this spot here for a tree. Now remember, one of the big issues here is the fact that the Able sisters refuse to recolor their house, so the main thing I gotta do is cover it up. And then I also want to make sure that this house here really seems like quite a big building, so white display stands and construction scaffoldings are a sure bet, right? Now on this left bit here, I have two options the way I see it. Either I'll leave it like this so that I can perhaps plant some trees on the lowest level, or I essentially need to extend the cliff all the way out so that I can plant trees on top of the platform. We'll see. I always want to try and make sure to tie in the big structures and houses and have like little transitions areas, so I decided to test out some different fence options just behind John's house. I actually ended up liking a combination of the fence and vertical fence, which was perfect because then I could extend the cliff by at least one tile so the spacing will work out. Not sure all of that just made sense. And then, as I still want to hide more of the Able Sisters siding, my best bet might be this utility pole on the right-hand side, and then maybe this decorative pillar on the left. Although, to be fair, I also haven't tested a flag yet. Word on the street is I do like me some branding. I'd also place a table just behind those white display stands to give me another surface for even more stuff, and ended up absolutely loving the office materials because it's basically rolls of fabric, right? And then for this building, I think I may be able to pause my pixel skills, and instead of making a sign, I will just work with a bunch of clothing items. I think I struggled with this part for about 30 minutes, if not longer, because the little bits surrounding the house where you can see the grass kind of peeking through are genuinely some of the hardest to decorate in my opinion. After a while, I then decided to see if a tree would fix it or help me, and surprise, it kind of does. You would think that I could learn from my previous experiences, right? Well, think again. Just behind the tree, I imagined a little display case, and upon turning that thought into reality, I promptly got myself stuck in between two giant furniture pieces. I felt like I had no other choice but to call a helicopter to rescue me. Very low key, of course. I can't really recommend it though because that landing was anything but smooth. With a hat and some boxes, and then even more boxes just in front, that display plan is working out quite well though, I would say. I placed another reception counter on the right-hand side of Abel's sister so that it would further hide the ugly siding, and also to be able to place even more things because the lag is not enough yet. Some flowers, a hat, and of course even more boxes later, and my vision is finally starting to really come across, aka Abel's sisters is disappearing. After another little break, Walker taught me how to cry. Hopefully that won't set the mood for this play session. Okay, quickly, let's focus on my favorite topic instead, trees. This one in front of Agnes' house will get stunted, whereas the cedar tree directly behind the trailer is now also fully grown. I quite like that. And then I think I would also love it if there was another tree crown visible above the top of the trailer, but I doubt a hardwood tree would show up enough. Maybe I will try a bamboo tree instead. And additionally, I also planted another tree over here. After the brief detour, back to the workshop I go. I decided to shift around the construction scaffolding and then actually added another layer of cliff like I had initially planned. This way I can also make space for yet another tree on top, and that is always a bonus. And then look who decided to show her face again. Lately, it feels like because I didn't give her the attention that she wanted, she has been avoiding me. Well, to be quite honest with you, I'm not complaining. And because I did like this for my own house a lot, I also added some hedge fencing to the cliff here, and then I considered another fence, but decided to check this out again once the tree in the back had grown in. The tree in front of John's house has now grown in, but feels a little too similar to the one on the right. Perhaps I could switch one of them to a cedar, or plant a cedar tree in front of the house here to break it up visually. Let me try that one, and then get a few of the trees that I've planted to the correct size. Both the cedar as well as the one on top of the cliff got stunted, and so did the hardwood behind the trailer a day later. And then finally the bamboo I'd planted behind the trailer also grew fully. I actually thought that it would show up a bit more than this, but in picture mode it's not too bad. And I also quite like the trees around Abel's sisters. And now, time for another item party. If I bring some more fence in here like I'd planned, that would be a perfect opportunity for, let's say it together, branding. And then I just need to make sure that I add more details to the front. Kind of like this, but with different colors. There we go, perfect. I also caught another conversation between some of the residents, and yet again, I'm astounded at how well they take on their roles. Flurry was telling Walker all about how she makes food look pretty as well as taste good, and how barely anyone really appreciates the artistic side of cooking. Makes sense as a food stylist. Now, how about some more boxes just over there to the left? And then perhaps some hedge? Yes, any gaps there are now covered. Okay, one more thing I feel like I need to fix up is this slightly open space as you walk past Abel's sisters. I'm thinking about adding another line of cliff to be able to use some vertical board fence. Let me try that. Here's the cliff, the stone path, fixing up the hedge, and of course, adding the vertical board fence. I feel pretty good about this. I do see some more item potential right here. There we go. Oh, and my outfit? Why, yes, it is new. I just bought it. Thank you so much. Now, I think this top bit here is all done, and I will just need to work on this and this. Flurry immediately got very curious once I started working on this part and decided this would be the perfect spot to squeeze into. Excuse me, I'm trying to fill this with items. Oh, this clothing piece seems to have caught her attention, at least for a little bit, because she immediately went to sit down again. Okay, wait, maybe I can just push her a little bit. Sorry, Flurry. But see, this spot would be okay. She did try to go back just a little later and we had to have a little stare off, which I won, kind of. She is really lucky that she's so cute. Although she then kind of behaved like a petulant child and sat down right there. Well, you know what? That's fine for me. Finally, I was able to throw a bunch more things down. Lots of boxes, more clothing, and some fancy fencing as well. And the next thing I knew, Flurry was basically caught on the tiny bit of land. Oops. Okay, let me save her. I do still need to change some colors anyway. Oh my god. On my way to the airport for some express customizations, look who I found deep in thought. Seems like after a lot of back and forth in the previous weeks, Tex has finally decided this life is not the right fit for him. Or perhaps he just wants to do his own Tex branded thing considering some previous conversations we had. I even thought that he was trying to get some insider tips asking Zell what the one thing he can't live without is, but then seeing them do a simultaneous twirl and shout out, lip balm, quickly made me realize these two are just besties having a conversation. I think they'll probably make sure to keep in touch. As I said goodbye to Tex, Tasha and I started thinking about who we'd want to employ in his place. Initially, we thought about bringing some actors on set as well. However, as I started interviews, it kind of got me thinking. Getting actors to permanently live on set would not be a financially responsible decision. Instead, it would make much more sense to bring them on temporarily and instead give the open spots to crew and post-production professionals. And then as I met Gonzo and saw the sparkle in his eyes, I knew it would be the right decision. Because hear me out, he immediately reminded me of Jack Murphy, the dance instructor from Bridgerton. And so with a new employee, friend, of course, secured for Framework, let me dive back into the decorating. The drink machine in front of the clothing workshop was joined by another caged cart, a fire hydrant, and of course some more boxes, as well as some trash. And for this exposed cliff part on the side, I added a snack machine to go with the drink machine, and also really like those fences again. I know what you're thinking, branding. And now, after all this road work, landscaping, house moving, and item carrying, I decided to give myself a little break and hand over the gardenscaping part to someone else, aka my off-video self. And thus, here is the final tour. The small awkward space between the headquarters and Agnes Place is now used for some renewable energy, while the one next to the Plaza building has been utilized for an intense branding moment. And then here we've got Agnes' hair and makeup department with the trailer in the background, and across the bridge our costume department with an on-site clothing workshop in the back. And plus, Flurry's house has also gotten a makeover, and the food art and styling department is also up and running, complete with a garage and car so that Flurry can deliver all these beautiful creations she makes. All those interiors do still require a makeover though. Make sure that you subscribe if you want to see how those turn out and to find out what jobs Zell and Walker will be taking on in the future. And then I hope you enjoyed all the progress we made on Framework today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!